you really want to hurt me? Do you really want to make me cry? I will stand tall and proud, 'cause I know I'm good enough. I can hold my own.
Okay, that's okay.
That's okay.
So shall I look like I've turned it over? A line from This Is What I Do that sums it up. I think there's nothing that I need to do. Take it nice and slow. I think it sums up the record. Comme ci, comme ça. Because it's a song about love, and it's a song about love from a new perspective. That love is kind of a mystical thing. It's almost impossible to prove. And I think when you get older, if you're lucky, you have a more realistic relationship with love. And you have different expectations that are more feasible, possible. So that song for me is like, you know, I don't understand love. I have many questions about love, but I love love. Let it be what it is, you know? I will clean it up afterwards. Okay. What story do your tattoos tell? Well, they tell different stories, you know. Some tell the story of boys. Some tell the story of heroes. My arm tattoos have been a very slow process. So I'm still working on them, and it's, you know, I do it very slowly. There are other tattoos around my body that were a little bit more hasty, perhaps made, you know, during not the best situations. So they all tell a story, you know. What did Joni Mitchell say? Songs are like tattoos, you know, I've been to see before. Yeah, they all tell a story, but usually it's to do with relationships or things I love, you know, or making a statement. I think tattoos are, you know, like clothes, you know, it's a way that you make a statement about who you are. I have Mark Bolan, I have Susie, I have Catwoman, and also I have Divine, but that's covered up. You ain't seeing that. You know Divine is? Yeah, I have sort of, it's a work in progress, so when it's finished, maybe next time, I'll reveal it. Let's go under here. Mm-hmm. Your voice. Your voice or my voice? Well, you know, singing for me was about having a voice, you know. It was a way of being heard and expressing my feelings and having my say. I think now, as an older man, I have much more respect for my voice. You know, I take more care of it. I practice more. When I sing, I really think about what I'm, not think. I try to connect very much to what I'm singing, you know. And I spend more time. When I make records, I spend much more time, you know. I'll come back to something, you know, I will spend a lot of time to get it, not perfect, but to get the feeling, to get the emotion. This is really important. You know, I like to sound, when I sing, I like to sound like it's easy, you know, that it's not a battle. So, you know, breathing is really important, and rest is really important. You know, one of the most important things for any singer. You can get through anything, but if you're tired, it's impossible. You have to sleep. And I love sleeping. I used to hate sleeping, now I love it.
Put down the booze, let the demons win the fight. I drop my gloves to the ground.
When I first started my career, I sang very much through my nose. So it's very
Nasal sounding voice.
And I never really liked that sound. Then in the 90s, I think my voice was really perfect, like really like the most perfect. And now, as an older man, I think it's a richer voice. It's a voice of experience. It's Mark Ronson called it a well-traveled tool or something. I don't know. Maybe I feel like I have the road in my voice. You know, I have experience in my voice. You know.
The kid was crying and her dogs were howling and a siren filled the
You know, I really like my voice now. You know, it's stronger, it's bigger, but it's also limited in some ways. You know, so. But I'm very happy with my voice. I think this one's stuck together. Where does your reggae self come from? That I don't know, you know. When I was like 14, I first heard reggae records in the 70s. Things like Ken Booth, Susan Cadogan, Johnny Nash, and then Bob Marley. And I just loved it. You know, it just speaks to me. It's a kind of breezy, sort of, you know, beautiful breezy sound. But also I think I do it well. I think, you know, if you know, some musics sit better with my voice than others. And for me, reggae just really is something I think I can do good, you know. So that's why I love it. And I love the rhythm. The rhythm is very important, you know. And yeah, I mean, I think the only reason you ever do sort of a particular style of music is because you love it, you know, and I love reggae music, you know, very much. So I guess it comes from the black woman inside me. How did the 70s shape you? Well, it was when I was, you know, a teenager. So it was when I first discovered music, pop culture, fashion, you know, and it was a very, very eclectic decade. You know, the 70s was probably the most bonkers decade of any decade. You know, the 60s was incredible, but the 70s was punk rock, electro, glam rock, you know, disco. You had so many things going on at the same time. You know, it was the same, you know, you had punk and then you had disco and Michael Jackson and, you know, Julio Iglesias and this, you know, this crazy time. And for me, it was my favorite decade because, you know, it felt like artists were in control. It felt like the artists, the bands, the musicians dictated the art form. Now it feels like the industry dictates the art form, that, you know, artists fit into the industry, they fit into the rules created by the industry. And I think that's really sad. And one of the great things about being a kind of marginalized artist is that I can do what I want. I don't have to fit in with anybody. And so I think in a way, this is why this period is the perfect time for me to make a record, because there's no pressure. You know, I can kind of do what I want and be very true to myself. And I don't have to worry about, oh, will I get played on the radio? Or is it going to fit into this format? Or who's my audience, you know? Who is my audience? I don't know. You tell me. You know, when I'm on stage and I look out, it's everyone. Every sort of person you can think. Young kid, goths, lesbians, gays, reggae heads, mums, dads. It's exactly the audience I want.
You used to be so sweet, I heard you say that my love was an addiction.
What I took from the 70s is that you can be, you know, obviously the music is really important, but also the style is really important. To have both is really perfect. To have a strong image, but also musical integrity, I think, is really important. That's what I learned from Bowie, from Mark Bolan, you know, from the whole sort of decade, really. What's so cool about self-destruction? Nothing at all. It's a disaster. It ends in tears. I mean, no, there's nothing cool about it at all. You know, but, you know, sometimes you take longer to realize it than other people. You know, it really depends on your personal journey. You know, sometimes people can go on forever. Keith Richards is a good example, but not everybody can be Keith Richards. The best way to answer that question is this. You know, being a mess and being sober are both commitments. You have to work out which one is the best for you. And for me, I've worked out that the best commitment for me is to be sober, because I do my best work when I have a clear head. You know, when I'm in the world, when I'm part of my life, that's really when I'm my most interesting. So I found out the hard way. Oh, I don't understand that.
Publicity and obsession. What is publicity and obsession?
You know what? When you first become a sort of public person, it's fun, you know? If you've never been in a newspaper before, the first time it's like sex. And the third time and the fourth time. And then eventually, you know, it gets boring. You know, it really gets boring. Like too much cake, you know, too much sugar. And I think, you grow up and you know, your hunger for attention diminishes, you know. I mean, now, you know, I have a really great private life. You know, I have time to myself. You know, when I'm being Boy George, it's my job. It's not an obsession anymore. And in the daytime, no one bothers me, ever. I mean, it's very rare that someone will come up and say, "Oh, you Boy George." It happens now and then, but not like before. Before it was relentless, you know. And I think, you know, when it comes to publicity, it's also important to say no to some things, which I do a lot. I say no to a lot of things. Don't want to do that. I don't want to talk about that. You know, I think I've learned over the years that, you know, it's important to have secrets, to have some things that are sacred. When I was younger, I didn't understand this. I just wanted to tell everybody everything, and now I don't. So, there's a difference. Okay. Will I be king again? Or queen? Well, you know, I really do feel like, you know, I feel on top of my life, you know? I really do feel that. I mean, regardless of, you know, how successful my album is, or, you know, how much money I make, as a person, I feel very successful. As a human being, I feel like a king of my own kind of, you know, my own self. So I think that is more important to me. You know, it's much more important to be a successful human being, because everything else, in a way, comes from that. You know, if you don't have a kind of strong foundation, you know, in your kind of ordinary life, then everything else becomes chaos. So I would say that, yeah, I feel not like a king as such, but princess. I feel like a lady in waiting. Okay, what's going on? Who's the classiest star? Well, Bowie is the classiest star, because, you know, now whenever I do anything, I ask the question, what would Bowie do? Would Bowie do this? Maybe not. So, you know, I do kind of use him as a kind of an example of, you know, I think Bowie's always been very classy. You know, he's always, he's made a few mistakes. Labyrinth was a mistake. The wig was a mistake, but I think when you compare him to other rock stars, he's really always been ahead of the game. So I would say David Bowie, no question. It's what I aim to be myself. Actually, funny enough, I do actually box now, because I do it as part of my training. So I actually do box. You know, it's something, when I was a kid, my dad really tried to get me to box, and I hated it. But now that I train, I have boxing as part of my kind of fitness regime. And obviously, you know, my dad's not around anymore, but my dad would be so pleased to see me wear boxing gloves. My dad would love it. He would be so happy. But no, so they're not over. They've just begun. No more questions. It's finished. Finito.
So
Okay.
the one you threw away was the worst moment, that's right?
Oh, the worst moment was reading that question.